The Dungeons and Dragons hobby has changed drastically over the past decade. It's arguable that throughout the half-century-long history of D&D, the past decade has shown the greatest change in the player base and the kinds of people who play the game of any decade in its history. Yes, the game was amazingly popular in the 1980s, and of course, that popularity led to nostalgia that fed into the Stranger Things TV show, which ironically caused it to have a second wave of popularity. And while many factors fed into that, the hobby back then was still formed of passionate and creative sorts. There was no internet, no social media, and whatever hipster subculture existed was completely alien to the flannel-clad millennial sodomites of today. Ginny D is a popular cosplay YouTuber. She has teal hair and above-average facial features, and while she certainly is not pretty enough to attract much attention, she is able to get quite a following simply by being involved in the D&D hobby, a refuge for mediocre women desperate for male attention, regardless of the quality of men it comes from. Somehow, likely due to the simping that runs rampant in D&D, Ginny D became some sort of foremost expert on Dungeons and Dragons. Her opinion waited on with bated breath from hordes of thirsty fans waiting and dreaming of the day she announces her OnlyFans. This is despite her having never read the Dungeon Master's Guide, and when she finally did, she had to make a video about how many great ideas were contained within. No shit, little girl. Perhaps you should actually play the game you claim to be passionate about instead of merely doing so performatively. People actually paid several $1,000s to play Dungeons and Dragons with her. For that much money, there had better be some sort of penetration involved. Christ, how pathetic is modern tabletop gaming. Instead of being a realm of imagination and creativity, it's a cesspit of celebrity worship, pre-generated modules, computerized bullshit, customized 3D printed miniatures, and other consumerist shit. It is frankly disgusting. The withered spines and cracked covers of the old AD&D rulebooks, the cheap dice from math education companies, the yellowing pages of notes stacked in accordion folders. There was something to that. One might dare to say something soulful, but at least one could say it was genuine. It was not for social media likes. Even in the age of the modern internet, in the age of 3rd edition and 4th edition, with character optimization arguments raging across web forums, there was not this sort of attention-seeking e-celeb worship. Ginny D, as cloying as she may be, is the apotheosis of modern D&D. That is just the truth. She is what Dungeons and Dragons is now, a shallow imitation of its former self, a hollow performative display of quote-unquote nerd cred, whatever the fuck that means, or is even worth in this day and age. Modern players are being introduced to the hobby not by veteran gamers, but by a mediocre cosplay thot whose thoughts on D&D are about as original as the 5th edition adventures Wizards puts out. Or in other words, for those watching who are still in their effeminate father's nutsack, when the original game came out, not original at all, because almost every one of those adventures is copied from one from the AD&D days. But anyway, it's hard to be angry at Ginny D in any way. This isn't her fault. But every aspect of her and her brand represents the Dunning-Kruger effect that has overtaken modern D&D, with new players who don't know jack shit about the hobby worship voice actors like Matt Mercer and Laura Bailey as D&D experts, when half of them can't even keep the rules straight and flood their games with multicolored freak shit festivals that are nothing like the aesthetic that D&D was based on. Ginny D, of course, would also support this garish cartoon aesthetic that has taken hold because she knows nothing else. She dresses in costumes for a living because she wasn't hot enough to make it as a model. That is her sole qualification. Yet because nerds are pathetic incels, she gets far more attention for her opinions on the hobby than those who actually were there in the past and have years of experience playing and running these games. Such is the way of the internet, I suppose, but this has also permeated the real-life hobby as well. Anyone who has been playing since the days of 2nd, even 3rd edition, will have noticed such a massive shift in the culture. If you meet D&D players at an event, it is like you occupy entirely different universes within the hobby. They have a list of YouTube and Instagram influencers who form the ethos of the game for them, as well as a list of well-polished Kickstarters they have backed. It is all so different now, which is not necessarily bad, but when the D&D hobby is personified by someone as unfit for the task as Ginny DI, that is certainly a dire sign for the future of the game.